Welcome to Mostly Mets, and obviously the big topic of conversation today is the Mets taking 2 out of 3 over the weekend from the Yankees, evening up the season series at 3-3, and that's where it'll stay. They ended up even, but honestly, the Yankees were really lucky to get a win in this series. The Mets clearly look like the better team. Now, the Yankees are definitely struggling right now. They're having some problems offensively, defensively, especially defensively, and they have some injuries in the pitching staff. But it's not really an excuse this weekend because the Yankees threw their two best pitchers. Yes, they threw Marcus Stroman as well, and Marcus Stroman doesn't seem like he's really a major league pitcher anymore. But the Mets were able to hit both Rodon and Fried. Now, Fried ended up, beating the Mets in Game 3, but Rodon, the Mets were able to handle, and Fried did not, he looked good for the first few innings, and then the Mets kind of tired him out and ended up getting some hits and some runs against him. So, really, if you're the Yankees, you're lucky. You feel really lucky to get one win in this series, and it came in a game that the Mets threw a bullpen game, and the Mets still had a chance and could have very easily won that game if not for a couple of really good defensive plays, especially that one by Cody Bellinger in left field where he made that shoestring catch and then doubled off Lindor at first base. If not for a couple of the really weirdest double plays I've seen in a long time, this is a sweep for the Mets. An extra millimeter down, and that ball skips by Cody Bellinger, and a run scores, and now you have a runner at third base down by 1 run. So it was really a game of inches in Game 3, and it shouldn't have been. The Yankees should have dominated the Mets in that game with who the Mets had pitching. It was a complete bullpen game, and it was really, you saw the worst of what they have. You had guys who nobody's ever heard of pitching 2 or 3 innings in that game, and it really should not have been that close. But anyway, Mets take 2 out of 3, and offensively, the Mets looked pretty good. The big star of Game 1, Soto, going 3 for 4 with a home run and 2 RBIs. And then obviously Jeff McNeil was really the biggest star of the game. He hit the go-ahead home run late in the game. Also made a really nice play on a ball hit by DJ LeMahieu. So really nice performances overall in Game 1. Game 2, the biggest performances has to be Nimmo with his first inning grand slam against Rodon. He went 2 for 4 with a home run and 4 RBIs. And then Pete Alonso had 2 home runs in that game as well and had 5 RBIs. So just overall consistent from the guys up top. Game 3 got a little strange. The top of the order wasn't really hitting in Game 3. A lot of the hits came from the bottom of the order. And that was really one of the keys to the series. I thought that the bottom of the order had to start performing. We saw it a little bit. Now, you still have guys like Taylor who's struggling and Torrens is struggling. They're not performing well right now. But Mauricio is starting to hit a little bit. You're starting to see a little bit of what Mauricio can bring. He's electric. He's not always going to make the best decisions. Like when he's running past second base, he thought the ball went into the outfield, got tagged out for a double play. I think it was in Game 2 of this series. Not what you want to see there, kind of just a dumb play. And you're going to have those with Mauricio. But you're starting to see him hit a little bit. He went 4 for 8 in this series. He's starting to turn it on a little bit. Maybe he's getting more comfortable with Major League pitching. He's finally healthy, and we could see big things, or he could be a valuable trade piece if he continues to perform like this. Beatty also went 3 for 6 with a home run. He's been up and down all year. You never know what you're going to get out of Beatty. It's been more bad than good, but he's had a couple of really good stretches that makes you think maybe he could figure something out. I don't know. And you're not really getting anything out of Mark Vientos right now. It's frustrating. He was supposed to be a big part of this offense, and he hasn't performed. But listen, I'm not going to get too much into the negative here because the Mets have won their last 2 series against the Brewers, who came in really hot, and against the Yankees, who obviously it's always nice to beat. I really, going into yesterday's game, I really thought, listen, the Mets aren't going to win this game. It's a bullpen game against Max Fried, who's one of the best pitchers in baseball. And I was like, I'm not going to be disappointed no matter what happens. But I was a little bit disappointed because the Mets did have a chance for the sweep, and they just couldn't do it. In the ultimate punt game, Davinsky and Waddell and all these guys who you really have no faith in whatsoever, they didn't do terribly. They were able to hold the Yankees to 6 runs. So you don't necessarily think that it was an awful game. at the end of the day, the Yankees should be embarrassed they didn't score more. And if the Mets somehow pulled off that game yesterday, I think you'd be talking. There would be major calls from Yankee fans to fire Boone, to fire Cashman, to restart the organization, because it would have been that bad of a loss for the Yankees. When your best pitcher is pitching against a bullpen, and a really bad bullpen, a bullpen that has a ton of injuries, and you're calling guys up from AAA every day, that would have been a really bad loss. So they were able to stave that off, and the Mets still do take 2 out of 3. So I can't complain. Overall, really good series. Now, obviously, in my video before the series started, I talked about the keys to the Mets winning this series. And the first one we talked about was the bottom of the order hitting and doing their part. And while I don't think they were spectacular, you started to see some signs, especially from Mauricio and Beatty and even McNeil. Those guys were really starting to hit well. You also had, Marte's not hitting at the bottom of the order, but Marte had a nice series. I think he had 5 hits in this series. So overall, their non-main guys were really performing pretty well. And I think that's important going forward. It can't always just be on Soto, Lindor, Alonso, and Nimmo. It has to be the other guys contributing as well. Even if they're not hitting home runs and driving in 3 or 4 runs, they still need to just contribute. They need to get base hits. They need to get on base for those guys coming up. And it was important to see them start to do that a little bit. My other key was the bullpen. And we've talked about it. The bullpen in this series, you weren't necessarily using your best. Now, obviously, in Game 1, you had Hageman starting. He gave you 4 1/3 innings, 4 runs. He wasn't great, but he showed signs. Really, at the end of the day, it was 3 home runs that ruined his day, and that was a problem with him in the minor leagues. I think he'd given up 11 home runs in like 40 innings in the minor leagues, so obviously the home run's an issue for him, and it continued in this game. He did give up 3 home runs, 5 hits. He didn't walk anyone, but he had 5 strikeouts, 4 earned runs. Overall, listen, it's what you could expect out of him. He could have easily gone in there and given up 8 runs in the first inning. He's just not really a major league pitcher. Now, I think there's some talent there that maybe he's a long man in the bullpen kind of thing or a spot starter here and there. He's not terrible, and his stats really don't do justice on how he pitched in this game. And so, really, I have no complaints about his start on Friday night. And then you get into the bullpen, and the bullpen actually performed well. You had Warren going an inning and 2/3. He didn't look great, but he was able to hold them to just 1 run. He gave up 2 hits, 2 walks, and a home run. He didn't look great, but he was able to hold them to 1 run. And then Brazoban comes in, gives you 1 inning, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, and looks really good in the process. And then Reed Garrett was really kind of the hero of the game because he gives you 2 innings, only gives up 1 hit, no walks, 1 strikeout, no earned runs. Huge innings by Garrett there to really bounce back. His last couple of appearances have been much better. He's not walking the ballpark. He's able to locate a little bit better. And the Mets really needed him to give them a couple of innings in that game because they didn't have Stanek available, they didn't have Diaz available, and they needed to be able to close that game out, and Garrett did that. And it's the first time we've really seen Garrett perform in a high-pressure situation in a long time. So it was important to see, and really, honestly, MVP of Game 1 probably has to be Reed Garrett because he gave them 2 innings to close out that game. Then in Game 2, Montas, listen, Montas, if you look at the box score, if you look at his final numbers, you're not going to be very impressed because he gave up 4 runs in 5 2/3. He gave up 2 home runs, 5 hits, but he had no walks. His strikeouts were down. He only had 2. But early in the game, you saw maybe why Stearns signed Montas. He has good stuff. He was throwing 98 miles an hour. He had he had everything working. He was in the zone. He wasn't walking people. He had his good control. And then I think later in the game, he just started tiring out. And obviously, he's not built up yet. He's only in his 3rd start, major league start of the year after basically a month in the minor leagues. But remember, this is early in the season for him. He didn't really have a spring training this year. So that month in the minor leagues was basically his spring training. And now you have to treat him as though he's in his 3rd start of the year. And clearly in that 6th inning, he really started to wear down a little bit. But I was impressed by Montas. I liked what I saw out of him. I know people were saying he sucks and he's ass and whatever. Frank the Tank, Montas and all that stuff. he was fine in that game. And you saw early on how good he really looked. I think sometimes people look at the final box score and think that's what the guy is, but that's not what he was for most of his start. It was more towards the end that he started struggling. So no complaints out of Montas, really. Would I have loved to see him with only the 2 runs given up? Sure, but listen, he's a 4th or 5th starter on this team in reality. Without the injuries, he's a bottom of the rotation guy. So, you could say what you want, but a bottom of the rotation guy giving you 5 2/3 innings and giving up 4 runs isn't that bad. And I know people complain, he got this contract. He got $17 million. It's not a lot of money for a starting pitcher. That's what 4th and 5th starters get. And if you're telling me that that's what I can get out of him every game, I'm okay with that, with the amount that this offense should score. Now we go into the bullpen of this game, and they gave you 3 1/3 innings pitched. They gave up 2 runs. So you had Lovelady, Devenski, Stanek, and Diaz in this game. Lovelady gave up a home run, obviously. Devenski only was in there for a third of an inning, gave up no runs. Then Stanek came in and struggled. He didn't have his best control. He walked 2. He gave up a run. And then Diaz came in and was Diaz like he's been all year. He gave you an inning, 1 hit. He gave up the 1 hit, but he had 2 strikeouts, no earned runs. And he's back to being the dominant Edwin Diaz that we're used to. And it shows he made the All-Star team this year, and he's back to being the Edwin Diaz that we all know. And they needed that. They needed a dominant Edwin Diaz performance this season, and so far he's given that. So the bullpen, while not great in Game 2, was good enough with really your bottom-end guys going into your top-end guys. So no complaints out of the bullpen there. In Game 3, it was all bullpen. Yes, Devenski is technically considered a starter, but he was really the opener in that game. But he gave you 2 innings. He only gave up 1 hit, struck out 2, no runs in 2 innings against the Yankees. That's impressive to me, and Devenski's looked pretty good. And then Pop comes into the game, and right away gives up a home run. He went 1 1/3 innings. He gave up 5 hits, 3 runs, and that home run. Pop is not a major leaguer. He shouldn't be on this team. He did not look good at all. Just the worst performance of any bullpen piece this weekend was Pop. Then Waddell comes in, gives you 2 2/3, 3 hits, 2 runs, gives up a home run. Listen, he's been up and down this year. Not going to hate on a guy he's probably not a major league pitcher, and he's coming in and being competitive. He's not blowing the game for you, so Waddell was okay. And then Brazoban comes in, gives you an inning, gives up a run. And then a guy I was pretty excited to see was Garcia, who the Mets just signed, and he goes 2 innings, only gives up 1 hit, strikes out 2, no earned runs. Really good performance by him in that game as well. Now, obviously, the Mets couldn't pull that Game 3 out, but even just to make it competitive with the pitchers I just mentioned being in that game, the Yankees should be embarrassed. It should not have been a competitive game. That's a game that the Mets punted. They didn't want to call up one of their top guys to make the start and just went bullpen game and almost pulled it out. It was a close game, and it was one that I expected to not be close whatsoever. So, good job by the Mets bullpen. Overall, they went 17 innings in this series. They gave up 19 hits, 6 walks, 18 strikeouts, 9 runs, and 4 home runs. The Yankees hit a lot of home runs. They came in second in baseball in home runs. I haven't looked at the stats. They might be first by now. I don't know. But they hit a lot of solo home runs. And you don't mind a solo home run. If nobody's on base and they hit a solo home run, okay, that's fine. No big deal. Especially when the Mets offense was scoring like they were in this series. So you're going to see a lot of home runs against the Yankees. You just have to limit the amount of people on base when they hit them. And the Mets were kind of able to do that in this series, and I think that was the difference. When the Mets hit home runs in this series, there was guys on base. When the Yankees hit home runs in this series, there was no one on base. So that was really the difference in this series. The Mets just were able to create more traffic on the base paths and therefore score more runs. And that's really all it boils down to. So in my keys to this series, I don't know that they fulfilled them completely. We didn't have great performances by the bottom of the lineup. We didn't have great performances by the bullpen. But overall, I think they were better than I thought they would be. And I think that's the most important thing. If they just incrementally get a little bit better, we have some pitchers on the horizon and even a hitter on the horizon coming back. So They just had to hold down the fort, and they were able to do so this weekend. So really nice series win. Last two in a row, 2 series in a row now, and the Mets, the needle might be moving in the right direction, getting towards the All-Star break here. There's only 6 more games till the All-Star break, and I think the Mets season is the ship is turning a little bit. You're getting towards the good, and I hope that's the case, and they have to continue it going forward. Now, we also had the All-Star teams announced for this season, and 3 Mets made it. Lindor is obviously a starter. Then you have Alonso as a backup or a bench piece on that team, and Diaz made the All-Star team as well. One guy that we all thought should have made it and didn't was Juan Soto. Soto, I understand why he didn't make it, because the first couple months of the season, he didn't look like himself. His numbers clearly weren't there. He wasn't getting the votes, and I think that kind of carried through to people just assuming he's not having a good season. But if you look at his numbers, it's better than a lot of guys who made it. Better than Tatis, better than even Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll started super hot this year and he's fallen off. Soto's been the opposite. He started off slow and has really picked it up lately, obviously being June Player of the Month. So Soto's definitely a snub there. Would have loved to see him make the All-Star team, but he didn't, and it's no big deal. Listen, we're not going to go crazy because of it. There are people going crazy because of it, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. We know how he's been. We're starting to trust him now and starting to like what we're seeing out of him. So whatever, it is what it is. But it is great to have 3 All-Stars. Lindor, Alonso, and Diaz. Obviously, Lindor's first All-Star team with the Mets, and he's starting at shortstop. So finally, he gets the recognition he deserves. And the funny thing is that he might be having his worst year, and he still made the All-Star team. So at the end of the day, I think the Mets fans just went out there and voted and got him in because he needed to, finally. And even though he hasn't performed all that well the last month or so, I think it has a lot to do with that toe, and he's not complaining about it, but I think it's bothering him. It's affecting him. Hopefully that gets better soon. I don't know how it is if he's still playing every day. But either way, well-deserved for those 3 players. Alonso's obviously having the season of his career so far. The power numbers aren't what we thought maybe they would be, but his average, his OPS, his RBIs, everything else is great. And listen, he'll hit some home runs. He's going to end up with 40 home runs. That's just the type of hitter he is. He's going to end up with 35, 40 home runs in his sleep every year. That's just what he does. So yeah, congratulations to those 3 guys. And maybe someone drops out and Soto gets in as well. We'll have to see. Up next for the Mets, they face the Orioles. So they're going on the road. They're going to Baltimore to face the Orioles for 3. Then after that, they go to Kansas City for 3, and then it's the All-Star break. And it's a good opportunity. As I said, the Mets seem like maybe they're turning the ship. They're pointing the needle in the right direction. These are teams that you should beat. The Orioles are 40-49. They just swept the Braves, but that's really saying nothing because the Braves are only good when they play against the Mets. When they play the Marlins, they get swept. When they play, the Orioles, they get swept. They only beat the Mets. They're bad against everyone else. And so it's a good opportunity here for the Mets to beat up on a bad team. The Orioles came into this season as maybe a favorite by some to win the East, and they just have not performed well, obviously at 40-49. And really it's both sides of the ball that they're bad on. On offense, they have an OPS of 705, which is 16th in baseball. They've only scored 371 runs, which is 21st in baseball. And they have 107 home runs, which is good for 11th. So they're not a good offensive team. They're kind of middle to lower end of the pack in every offensive statistical category. They're just not a very good offensive team. And then when you look at their pitching, it gets really bad. They're 27th in ERA, 27th in WHIP, and they've given up the second most home runs at 123. So they're not good on either side of the ball, but it's especially their pitching that is bad. And so this is an opportunity for the Mets to go in and do damage against a team that is just really not very good. And it's actually a good opportunity also to see some of the players that you might be thinking about trading for at the All-Star break. At the trading deadline. This is a team that's probably going to be selling some of their veteran players. They have a good young nucleus. They just did not surround them with the right veterans. And I think that the Mets should be shopping in the Orioles. People talk about Cedric Mullins. I'm not a huge Mullins fan. Is he better than Tyrone Taylor? Yeah, probably. But, I mean, he's hitting like .213 this year with 13 home runs. He gives you more power. He plays good defense. Is he that much better than Taylor? I know we look at Taylor and he's been really bad for the last few weeks. But I don't know. Is he really that much better than Tyrone Taylor? I don't tend to think so. I just really don't. Could it be he need a change of scenery? Could that be what it is? I don't know. I wouldn't really touch Cedric Mullins unless you're getting him for basically nothing. He's a rental. He'll be a free agent after the year. If you want our 60th best prospect, sure, but I'm not giving up anything significant for Cedric Mullins. I just don't think he's really worth it. If you look at his WAR, he's a negative WAR player. He's a minus .4. So he has not had a good season, and I just don't really see the love for Cedric Mullins. But they have some other guys as well in the bullpen. There's some guys there that you can be looking at and scouting going forward and into the trade deadline. In this series, we also have a couple guys maybe coming back. So it was reported that on Tuesday, Winker may be activated from the injured list. He's been performing in his rehab starts. I know he's hit a couple home runs down in the minors, and he'll be a big boost for the lineup. He was a guy who was supposed to be kind of a middle-of-the-order bat in this lineup, and he just hasn't been there most of the year. We don't know who's going to go down for Winker to come up, but Marte did seem to tweak his knee at the end of the Mets-Yankee game yesterday. So maybe he has an injured list, thing going on here. I don't know. But obviously there's something going on with that knee. If it's not Marte, if his knee is fine and he just needs a day or two off of it, then I could definitely see it being Mauricio. And I wouldn't love to see that only because I think he's been performing better lately. We're starting to see him pick up his performance a little bit. I know you can talk about his dumb mistakes and all that, but he's hitting the ball better. He's getting on base. He's starting to look like the guy we thought maybe he would be. He's hit a few home runs. He's starting to figure it out, and I would hate to send him down for Winker, but he's probably the guy that it happens to if Marte's okay. Which, honestly, I hope Marte's okay because he's been really good lately. I think he's hitting around 270 right now. He had 5 hits in this last series. He had 3 hits in the last game. I have no issue with Marte playing a lot as your right-handed DH. If you go back to what the original plan was, it was Marte as your right-handed DH, Winker as your left-handed DH. I could definitely see that continuing going forward. And then you're going to see less playing time from guys, whoever's playing better between Beatty, Vientos will play third base. Maybe Beatty plays over at second base. Maybe you move McNeil to center field. Beatty plays second. I don't know. They're going to have a lot of options once you have Winker back. But most likely Mauricio's not going to be part of those. And then there's talk in the next series in Kansas City that they're going to be getting Senga back, which would be unbelievably important. They need their starting pitching back. Manaea, Senga. I honestly, at this point, would almost try to hold them out until after the All-Star break. Just give them the extra time. Make sure they're completely healthy before they come back. That would be my preference. But listen, I'm not going to complain if you see Sean Manaea or Kodai Senga pitch against Kansas City, another team that struggles. They're just so important, and we've been without them for so long now. And the team has really fallen apart ever since Senga's injury. So getting him back is going to be a big boost for the team. It's going to push everyone back into their more regular roles once you get both of those guys back, and just overall helps the pitching staff so much. If you're still here and you like this type of content, please subscribe, give me a like, comment, whatever you want. And that's really all I have today. I think there's exciting things happening for the Mets. I think there's there's a different feeling now than there was a week ago regarding this team. Because of the last 6 games, they won 4 out of their last 6 against good teams. Listen, you could say the Yankees aren't good right now. They're not. They're not playing well. They have some injuries. They're just not, but I also just don't think they're a very good team, especially offensively. And I don't think they have enough pitching. You have 2 guys at the top of the rotation and not much else. Is Heel coming back? Sure, maybe. But they just don't have enough starting pitching-wise. Their bullpen is a little bit shaky, especially with Luke Weaver not performing well since he's come back from the injured list. and their offense kind of is just old and flat sometimes. You have Goldschmidt and Stanton, and they're not a very good offense. They have a couple of guys. Bellinger looks pretty good. Obviously, you have Aaron Judge, who's a superstar. He's the best player in baseball. But other than that, Jazz, he doesn't excite me. I don't get too excited for Jazz Chisholm. They're just not a very good team. And the Mets clearly were the better team in this series. And I'm just happy that the Mets were able to take 2 out of 3, from Milwaukee. Now you go to Baltimore. Hopefully they don't play down to their competition, and they're able to take at least 2 out of 3 in Baltimore, 2 out of 3 in Kansas City, and then you go into the All-Star break feeling really good about yourself. That's the plan. That's the hope. And, that's really all I got. So until next time, let's go Mets.